Well, welcome to another edition of Out and About in Richfield. And today, Pam and I are with Floyd Roman. Floyd, of course, was a longtime police officer, police sergeant, police lieutenant, I think? Captain. Yeah. Excuse me, captain, with the city of Richfield. And it's the middle of summer, of course, and you think about the kind of things that happen in summer. And we've been fortunate not to have any tornadic events in the Twin Cities this year. But back on July 20th, 1951, there was a tremendous tornado event that happened in the metropolitan area. And that's what we want to talk about today. Because back in that storm in July of 1951, a tornado actually touched down in Richfield. There was extensive damage in Richfield, the likes of which has never occurred in the city since then. And actually that night, you were working, Floyd.
Yes.
So let's go back to July 20th, 1951, and let's kind of talk about what happened. And I want to set the stage first, but okay, at that point in time, Floyd, how many officers did the city of Richfield have?
Well, there was the chief and 10 officers.
Okay, the chief and 10 officers. And then I imagine with a force that small, you didn't have a lot of people working at any one time, considering people were off shifts and you had to cover 24 hours?
That's right. Normally in the evening shift there would be 2 officers in 1 squad car. And as you indicated, 10 officers, that's 6 officers around the clock.
Right.
But we needed to fill in for days off and vacation.
Sure.
And that's why we had 10 uniform officers.
But that evening, 1 squad, 2 officers.
Chuck Babcock and myself were the 2 officers.
Now, Chuck Babcock is the younger brother or older brother of Floyd Babcock? Fred.
Yeah, he's the younger brother of Fred.
Okay, so, and Fred Babcock was the officer who was shot in 1949, correct?
That's right.
And so after he's shot, his brother Chuck comes to work on the police force, and he's your partner that night.
He happened to be my partner that night.
Tell us what happened. Tell us how did it all come about when the storm moved in that evening?
Well, we were on the 4 to midnight shift, and started out fine. And towards 9 o'clock or so, it had been raining a little bit, but the rain increased, and we were coming down Penn Avenue south, I remember. And as we turned on to 76th Street to come over to Lyndale, the rain picked up quite a bit. And finally to the point that I couldn't drive. I happened to be the driver that night.
Mm-hmm.
So we pulled over to this grocery store located on the southwest corner of 76th and Lyndale. And we parked right by the store. Well, as we sat there, the rain increased and now came the wind. And finally to the point where the squad car started to rock like this. And I said to Chuck, I said, geez, this is pretty bad. And he says, yes. Well, that's about all we thought about at that time. And then finally, all the lights went out in the area. And we got our first call that a streetcar had been overturned by the wind on 62nd and Nicollet. Now, the streetcar wide there, it didn't come into Richfield, and then it went back north into Minneapolis.
Floyd, not to interrupt, but one thing that I think that it's hard for people to imagine when we listen to what's going on here compared to what it's like today, a couple of things. You really couldn't turn on the TV and watch some weather guy say, well, on Doppler radar we got storms moving. I mean, like, none of that existed. There wasn't really any kind of warning, was there?
Well, that was 57 years ago.
Yeah, right,
Things
exactly.
have improved since then
Yeah.
as far as weather instrumentation and so on. And we had heard nothing about it when we came to work as far as the citizen radio or so on.
Sure.
Nothing was said on the police radio. It just happened.
Just happened, so everybody gets caught off guard. You know, you think you're maybe getting into a little rainstorm, and little do you know that you're going to be facing one of the worst tornadic events that hits the metropolitan area.
That's right.
Continue. I'm sorry to
Okay,
interrupt
well
you.
then, as we started proceeding over that way, continuing across 76th to go in Nicollet, and it was a kind of an eerie look around because every time it was complete darkness. But when the lightning flashed, you see utility poles bent over and this and that. And it was just eerie.
I can imagine.
Well, we finally got down to that location. The fire department had just pulled up, and they were out with their axes trying to get up. There were 2 people, I think, in there. It was just waiting to go back so it wasn't crowded or anything. Well, then a call came in to the shopping center at 65th and Lyndale. So we started over there. And up to this point, we really didn't, gee, this is a tough wind. But when we approached 65th and Lyndale and the shopping center, then we decided it was more than just a wind. This must have been a tornado because the shopping center was leveled. There was
Wow.
auto garage on the west side of Lyndale, completely leveled. All the blocks are lying, the building blocks are lying across Lyndale Avenue. The Richfield Messenger, which was the newspaper at that time, their building was on the west side. That was leveled too, blown out. And then there were a couple of houses next to the shopping center that were also leveled. And looters, you wouldn't believe. And it was still pouring rain.
Oh my
so, I
gosh.
mean, they're up there. Well, when they saw us coming, they went down the street, but no further than that. Then they started looking around the street for stuff. Now, there was a jewelry store, a men's store, kind of a woman's store too there, and a kitty corner, which was the name of the store.
Oh, yeah.
And there were several insurance and real estate offices there. But to our concern mostly was that the shops just closed at this hour. Plus there was a bowling alley in the lower part.
Mm-hmm.
And as quickly, in the dark, trying to operate 2 of us, well, we did the best we could as quickly to see it. And we had paid no attention to looters. And, you know, that was not the biggest concern at the moment.
Sure.
Well, we heard no yells for help or anything like that. And besides that, then we get a call from at the Richfield Theater, the roof blew off.
Of the movie theater.
Yes.
And where was that located at that time?
Well, that's 65th and Nicollet, which is now a bank.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the structure is still pretty much the same, really.
Oh.
Along like that.
Okay.
And, well, Friday night, there'd be a lot of people at the movies.
Right.
So, geez, we go over there, and the roof had blown off except where the stage was. And they were all huddled under there, but everybody seemed to be all right. Well, then we start getting calls about these houses that are blown away and people injured. And we thought to ourselves, this is too much. We've got to get more help. What are the 2 of us going to do with all this? So with the communications being out, the only thing we could do is drive to the chief's house. Now, he lived on 65th and Cedar. And we get over there, and the lights in his house are on. Huh? And, you know, the area there didn't seem to be damaged too much. Well, I went up and knocked at the door, and I told him about these things I've just told you. Oh, he said, it can't be that bad. We almost had to drag him out of there. Yes, chief, you know, it is bad, and we need help. Well, now he's got a little problem, too, because although he had utilities, the officers probably didn't, or a lot of them.
And did most of them live in Richfield? Or?
Yes, at that time, yeah.
Yep, all right.
And so we left that job up to him to get the people. Meanwhile, we got other things that we have to take care of. So that's where it came to that point.
Now, your whole rate, you know, back then, and now we have a 911 dispatch center here at City Hall. We have for many, many years. Mm-hmm. Back in those days, though, you didn't have a dispatch center, did you, here?
No, we depended on, well, most of the suburbs, I think all of them, rented time from the Minneapolis Police Department, radio time. They did our calls. And that presented another problem. Minneapolis also had at least fringe damage from this tornado. And so they were plenty busy, and, you know, we're renting. We didn't want to bother them too much with their own problems. This storm, the core of it was from just west of Lyndale, down to the airport, from 62nd, out to 66th Street. That's where the core of the tornado went through. The fringe of it was all the way, I understand, to 50th Street in Minneapolis, out to what is now the freeway, old Highway 5. So, well, as a matter of fact, the building we were parked next to on 76th and Lyndale, when we pulled out of there, here's the roof lying across 76th, or Lyndale Avenue there at 76th Street.
Blown all the way over.
Yeah, and we never even heard there was too much noise from all the rain and everything. But that roof had been blown off right next to us.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So even the fringe area got considerable damage. And I think as a result of all the rain, there's about 8 inches of rain in that short time. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, there's a really interesting story about a particular family, what happened to their house and to them in particular during the storm. And you've brought in, you even have newspaper clippings and photos from the tornado, and they show the extent of the damage to this family's home. Tell the viewers what happened.
Well, yeah, that was a little unique too. The Herbst family, who lived down on near 64th and 3rd Avenue, their house had blown away, and the husband, of course, the family got separated. The only thing left standing there was a car, which he crawled to and got into temporarily, but he's worried about his wife and his baby, who was 2 years old. So the neighbors, some of the neighbor houses were not damaged. So they came over to help, and they discovered the wife crawling back towards the house. But where's the baby? So then they heard this cry come from a nearby potato field, and they went out there, and there was a baby lying there, bruised, as all three of them were, but not serious as far as any harm to it. It's kind of different now that tornado picked that up and deposited that baby out in this potato field.
Yeah.
And just amazing to think that, right, the house is completely destroyed.
Yes.
The tornado picks the baby up, carries the baby probably hundreds of feet away,
Oh, yes.
or more,
Yeah.
and puts the baby back down in the potato field, and the baby lives. What happened up in Hugo, where that family had their home destroyed this summer, and the child was taken out by the tornado? Of course, that ended in tragedy with the child being killed. So that was so lucky. And when you look at the extent of the damage of that home, it's amazing that any one of the three made it out of there alive. And there was another event, wasn't there, Floyd, where in that same tornado, where it actually picked the house up, spun it around,
Well, it twisted it some, yeah.
twisted it,
dropped it
right back on the
foundation.
Oh my God!
All out of whack, of course. But
All of a
Yeah.
sudden, the house has a new orientation.
yeah, you look out the window, it isn't the same as before.
My gosh.
And what were some other kind of ironies or,
Odd stuff that
odd
happened.
stuff from this storm?
Well, I remember when things lightened up a little. Well, as a matter of fact, the next morning, I saw next to the shopping center, there was a tree there with a board sticking in the trunk of the tree. Now that was driven in there
By that,
somewhere.
the power of the wind.
Then a lady indicated, I noticed in the newspapers at the time, that she saw this package hanging on her fence. She went out there, and it was a package with the indication that it came from the shopping center, which was 2.5 miles away. And she says, kind of a funny little thing added to the article, that it was a pair of nylons, same size as she wore, size 9. She said she was going to keep them.
Yeah.
Well, there was, this damage, as the tornado went through, it destroyed houses. Even here at the then Village Hall, there was a 2-car garage in the back, which was blown down. There was a skating rink out here with the warming house. The warming house was blown down. And where the parking lot is now, there used to be a bandstand, and the roof was blown off that. So even though it was out of the core area, it still got damage there. Proceeding further east, there's a farmhouse down on 63rd and Portland, and a barn, and kind of an out shed. And the barn was blown down, the house heavily damaged. And strange thing, he had a ground watering system, and the wind pulled the pipes out, and he never did find all parts of that pipe from the watering system.
Actually pulled it out of the ground.
Yep.
Wow.
Speaking of water, you know, it's kind of interesting that back then, I mean, everybody, got your water through the wells. Everybody had
Right.
their own wells, and you needed electricity to
Yeah.
access that water. You were telling us earlier, I mean, so many residents were without water then.
Well,
And
yeah,
electricity. I mean.
that's another part of the whole tornado is what happened afterwards, the next 2 days. Oh, I should mention before I end this trip of the tornado, it went down to the airport, and we had, at that time in this area, a flight squadron of 22 fighter planes. Every one of them was destroyed.
Oh my.
And a flight had come in from Denver of 16 fighter planes on some kind of a mission. They just landed before the storm hit. All of them were destroyed too, and then some bigger planes. But of course, even though the airport was kind of part of our jurisdiction at that time, we thought there was, they could handle the situation themselves. An interesting thing about that, though, is the Navy down there, they said that the barometer dropped to the bottom of the chart when that tornado went over.
Oh wow.
And the winds were 100 miles an hour. There were several roofs of the hangars blown off and so on and so forth. But anyway, now I forgot your question.
Oh, I was talking about people then, like you were saying.
Oh,
after
the after
storm,
effects.
The after effects.
Oh, geez, this was terrible. Now, you got to remember, Chuck and I, we started at 4 o'clock the night of the tornado. We worked 20 hours straight, and we were just so fatigued. We had to go home. Well, by this time, there was more help. They got the fire department and volunteer fire department at the time. We even had the city manager out, if you believe it.
You're kidding.
Yeah, helping with the traffic and so on.
What could a city manager do to help? I mean,
Traffic detail.
Well,
oh yeah, really.
yeah, he could help, and he did. But you see what happened now, when everybody hears about this outside this area, they want to sightsee. And we had 2 perfect sunny days. This happened on a Friday night of all nights. So
It was
Chuck-
about, wasn't it around 9:30 at night or something, 9
Yeah.
o'clock when this thing hit? Yeah.
So there was continual traffic, and they all wanted to get into this area north of 66th Street.
Just come to look and see
Yeah,
what happened
with
here.
other people's problems. But at any rate, Wyzetta sent us 10 auxiliary police officers. You know, they had an auxiliary police.
Yeah.
So they sent us, now we had some help, and what we did, we blocked off 66th Street to all these exits to the north, so nobody could get in there, at least with their cars.
Mm-hmm.
So they start parking in the neighborhoods and trying to walk in. You know, if we caught them, we'd chase them back out. But there were even reports that some people would come in and start going up to the houses and trying to take something of value that they might want or something.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was terrible, how people react to something like this. At any rate, I've never seen before or after the amount of cars that were in Richfield at that time. Everything was bumper to bumper, all the way across 66th Street, all our main roads, Portland, Nicollet, Lindale, Penn. And one fellow was told, the officer was directing traffic at 66 and Lindale, I've been through here 3 times. How do I get out of here? You know? And then we get calls of fender bender accidents. You know, they're all gawking in this fringe area looking at it. And one fellow reported 2 accidents in the same block, one right after the other. Well, there were minor accidents, just fender bender. So we didn't pay no attention to that. They could handle that themselves. Mm-hmm. So, well then, as you mentioned about the wells, all the wells are operated by electricity. Electricity is gone in this area. So they needed water to flush your toilet, to wash with, to drink. Well, the fire department had a big old tanker at that time, a real old tanker. And they brought water in for washing and for the toilet and whatever else. But drinking water was a problem. So Northland Creamery, they had 3 tanker trucks that hauled milk.
Yeah.
Now this would be, you know, more purified and so on and so forth. So they volunteered with the drivers to bring in water to these people that needed it in that area. The Red Cross came out, and they were very nice. They set up one of those mobile canteens for the people and for the officers and the others that work on an emergency basis. So that was a great help too. And I was really kind of proud of Richfield. Nobody complained to the police that we didn't get there, because I think they realized, you know, there are greater things happening, that they were busy, or we were busy. And the neighbors pitched in, helping neighbors, and I just felt good about that part of the whole thing.
You know, with the extent of damage that Richfield had that night, were there fatalities in Richfield?
No, this was a part of a big storm.
Right.
That hit the greater Minneapolis, or Twin City area, I should say. Now, overall, there were 8 people killed in this storm.
Okay.
Fortunately, none from Richfield. And
Wow.
2 of those people that were killed were just, they touched electric wires, you know. So,
They were down? Oh.
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, hearing the extent of our damage, we're really fortunate, and
Oh.
a child being blown into the potato field and whatnot, that we didn't have any fatalities.
And
That's-
again,
yeah.
and if you think about it again, I mean, nowadays, pretty much when a tornado hits, everybody has a lot of notice. You know, the sirens have gone off.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you've got your radio, your TV on, you know, they're telling you go to your basement and, you know, how to protect yourself from the storm. But I just can't imagine being in an event like that where you have no idea that this is about to happen to you, and to see the, you know, the extent of the damage that Richfield had, and have no one killed in that process, it's almost a miracle.
How
Well-
did your home fare?
Well, that's the other thing,
Um,
too. We're driving around, you know, or taking care of other people's
sure.
problems, and we got our own problems, so to
I
speak.
would think so.
You know, I'm worried about I had a couple of kids and my wife.
Mhm.
And so after about a couple hours, I did sneak a little time to just drive home and see what was going on. And everything was fine. We lost some shingles off the roof of our house, but that was about it. You know, it's a personal problem.
Oh,
too,
absolutely.
For these officers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, to get the city back to normal, to get all of this damage repaired and stuff,
Oh,
it took a long time, I imagine,
yes,
Floyd.
Yes, I can't say exactly, but
Right.
it was a long time. Those houses, they rebuilt them,
Mhm.
the same place.
I would have
Most
thought
of
even the cleanup efforts
Oh yeah,
to pick up all the
clean those
debris.
streets.
Right.
That Lyndale Avenue, you know, where the shopping center was.
Yeah.
Oh, just littered with debris and so on and so forth. Fortunately, most of the other stuff was in the residential areas, so it wasn't a thoroughfare.
Right.
Lyndale Avenue, at that time, there was no freeway, so Lyndale was the main road, the main state
Oh,
highway.
sure.
Going out to Bloomington and
Yeah.
beyond. So, yeah, there's a lot of, for 10 or 15 minutes, boy, there's a lot of time and effort after that was needed to clear that whole mess up.
Well, it's 10 or 15 minutes that I imagine that anyone who's watching this show who lived through that 10 or 15 minutes, especially if they were anywhere near that area where the carnage happened in that northern part of Richfield, I'm sure that's 10 or 15 minutes that you'd absolutely never forget.
Oh, yeah.
Never forget.
And it's so sudden and scary, you know. And,
Right.
And even where we were parked in the fringe area, the rocking of the car and so on, that only lasted about 10 minutes. So it was similar to
I'm
it.
impressed that you didn't like try to go for cover somewhere. You just sat
Where?
around.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
where?
at the store, I'm not sure, but
There
I
was
don't know
a,
that I would have that courage to just sit in the car and.
well, we had no place else to go. And then there was a tavern across the street, across 76th Street. And they were yelling and laughing, you know, until the lights went out.
Until the lights went out.
And then silence, complete silence. I think they were all talking about being scared. I think they were.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Floyd. And you never know. We might dig up another story that Floyd has, and we might be back again talking about something in the future.
Well, I have those 2 albums, and
I'm
I
sure
could
there's-
either give them to you to look over and see if there's anything of interest, because there was a lot of interesting cases and so on and so
I'm
forth.
sure.
And,
I think.
I think we're gonna. I think we're gonna be. I see a few more shows.
in our future.
Right. Well, again, thanks for being with us,
Sure.
Floyd. And until we see you next time and out and about in Richfield, Take care.